Clay, do you want to start this one with your conclave of 8 statement beliefs? Or
I already have the tattoo, man.
I know.
As soon as it was whispered in a throwaway line of dialogue, I was like, that's going to be important, and it's going to come up, and she's going to talk about it as though it's something everybody should know and matters, and blah, 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 blah. And here we are, the Conclave of 8.
Not just the nickname for your abs. It's also a star system.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what that means when they finally get there. Yep.
We're talking about broken pieces today.
Nothing like adding a new mystery in the 8th episode of your 10-episode season.
Huh? I know. Well, they solved so many mysteries in this one that they had to add something to keep you going. Let's take a break. We'll play some music. We'll come back and we'll break down broken pieces. Okay, so Broken Pieces is the 8th episode of the first season of Star Trek Picard. Came out on March 12th, 2020. Written by Michael Chabon, directed by Maha Vervillo, I believe that's how you pronounce it. When devastating truths behind the Mars attack are revealed, Picard realizes just how far many will go to preserve secrets stretching back generations, all while the La Sirena crew grapples with secrets and revelations of their own. Narissa directs her guards to capture Elnor, setting off an unexpected chain of events on the Borg cube. I don't know where you want to start with this one. I watched this one twice. I'm willing to bet you didn't.
Hey, I do homework. I didn't watch it twice.
Did you? I ride home on the train, obviously backwards and forwards, so I had a chance to watch it twice. If you watched it once, what's your takeaway for overall quality? Like really quickly.
It seemed like a lot of exposition and a lot of explaining stuff at length, with a couple good scenes thrown in, and they almost did something interesting with 7 of 9, but then they decided not to for some reason. Yeah, I don't know. It didn't really.
Would you say it's one of the better episodes or one of the worst episodes of the season, or like is it somewhere in the middle? Did you not really think anything particularly of it?
Yeah, it's kind of somewhere in the middle for me, because like it's nothing about it made me super engaged, and nothing about it really made me say this is garbage. Like it was better. It wasn't, the good stuff in it wasn't as good as last episode's good stuff, and the bad stuff in it wasn't as bad as last episode's bad stuff. Yeah. So I find it somewhere in the middle.
When I watched it the first time, I came away thinking that I really enjoyed it. And I wonder how much of that was just due to the fact that you finally get answers to things in this episode quite a bit. Like
they gotcha.
You get a lot of information, and it is a lot of exposition. But at the same time, it feels like you're like, okay, now I kind of know what's going on here. I watched it again a second time, and I almost didn't realize, like, once you understand what's going on with Rios, the Rios scenes are interminably long. Like there's so much Rios, and Raffi talking to the Rios holograms, and she talks to virtually all of them individually, then as a group, and then she talks to the real Rios. And none of those scenes really tell you anything until you get to the real Rios. And all the holograms are just like, talk to Rios, right. See what he says.
Well, the thing that was driving me a little crazy about that stuff is she kept asking them, hey, have you seen Rios? Do you happen to know where he is? And they all say he's in his cabin, but she never goes to his cabin. Like like she doesn't know where it is or something.
Yeah, it's not like she goes there and he says piss off, and then she goes and talks to the holograms or something. But I was
that does happen, but
does that? She does leave him, doesn't she? And then she goes back.
She talks to the holograms and says like, hey, do you know where he is? And they're like, I don't know. Check his cabin. And she's like, yeah, maybe. And then she eventually, after talking to them, she goes to the cabin, and he tells her to fuck off.
Is that when she has the group hologram scene? I
think the group hologram scene is after that.
Okay, that would make sense. But regardless, it's a lot of talking to those guys, and they don't really tell you anything. And
Right.
it stands out as like this just kind of a performance thing that they're putting into the episode. And I wouldn't have minded it if the idea of these holograms reflecting personality quirks of Rios was actually somehow involved in what she was talking to them about, but it doesn't
Right.
really seem to be the case. It just seems like that's the setup for the idea, and then it's an excuse for the actor to put on different accents. And it's just, when I was rewatching it the second time, it's probably like 20 minutes of the episode is dedicated to that, and it really doesn't feel like it needs to be that much.
That's a hell of a report.
And you thought I was a desperate old man, quixotic, paranoid, possibly senile.
Let's just leave it at quixotic.
And now the windmills have turned out to be giants.
You want an apology?
I want a squadron.
Jean-Luc?
Clancy, out there in the Vide system, right now, beings who have as much right to life and liberty as you and I, or Commander Data, are being hunted down by an enemy who seeks to exterminate them.
Jean-Luc!
No, Clancy, if you say this is not a job for Starfleet, then I'm sorry, but you are a waste of space.
Admiral Picard, with all due respect, and at long last, shut the fuck up. I'm sending a squadron to rendezvous with you at DS-12. Now stay put until they get there. Clancy out.
I'm surprised they didn't just do the one scene with all of them or something. Like, I don't know why you need to go. First of all, the first one, when she goes to talk to, and she doesn't realize it's not him. He doesn't usually wear like classy cardigans. I'm sure
he doesn't comb his hair. The real Rios doesn't comb his hair. Yeah.
I'm surprised that she was taken aback by that. But I feel like they probably could have cut to the chase pretty quickly with that. Because the only thing that you get from all of them in basically every scene is that there is a blind spot in their memory that he has erased.
Yes, and that he knows the original girl, the original Jana or whatever that girl, the original Soji android.
Yeah, I feel like you don't get anything from talking to all of them that you couldn't get from talking to one of them.
Yes, exactly. It doesn't really add anything. Rios is it's a strange storyline. It is bizarre that he's linked to them this way. He was a random person that they just hired because Rafi knew him at the start, and to have him have a direct connection to the mystery plot that they're setting off seems a little bit cumbersome, honestly. Like,
space is a big place.
Yeah, apparently not. It's a small world. Small world syndrome, I think they call this.
It's very, very convenient that everybody on this ship has a direct connection to everything else that's going on. But I mean, I guess that's how, that's, you want your characters to be involved in the story. But, the stuff with Rios, it feels like imagine if Han Solo at the end of the first Star Wars movie, it came out that Han Solo's family was killed by Grand Moff Tarkin or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's like, it's just, that's not really something you need. The characterization was good enough. In this case, I don't think the character is there. So you have to add something to make him matter to the story, unfortunately.
Yeah. And, it's cumbersome and all that stuff. And I think that the bigger problem with it really is that this mystery the revelation that his captain learned, and that Commodore O commanded his captain to kill the original Daj and the other android that was with her.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's more of this, like, the fact that they're building up the mystery to the point where the Romulans and the Zhat Vasht or whatever are saying, like, this is such a revelation, it'll blow your mind. It's not really that kind of a revelation. You know what I mean? It's like, it's just so, dressed up.
How is it different than anything that they said about control in Discovery?
I don't know how it's any different from anything has happened in Star Trek before.
Yeah.
Like
that. Yeah. It's pretty generic as far as, prophecies about the end times go, I guess.
Well, here's a maybe a good way to get into this one is to talk about when we started doing modern Trek with like Discovery and stuff like that, I kind of had the opinion, I was like, Star Trek is just a brand. It can kind of do whatever it wants as long as it's branded that way, and people will think that it's Star Trek, but it's good to sort of push things in new directions and stuff like that. I listened to a the Ready Room podcast, the latest one that came out, which was about the first 5 episodes of Picard. And they were fairly critical on it, but they also, I think they started convincing me that my original opinion about what you can do with Star Trek is wrong on some level, like that. And it comes down to basically their point that, which I feel makes sense, is that the reason that you have different franchises is because they all have their own rules that they operate by. And once you start changing the rules of your franchise, it no longer is that franchise anymore. It loses what makes that franchise an individual, unique thing, and like a unique property. And I think that's true. But at the same time, I wanted to be cautious and not make it sound like I'm just saying, like, just because they don't use the transporter as much as I want them to do, it's not Star Trek. It's more fundamental to like the storytelling that they're choosing to do. And it comes down to me, and probably some people say this is a nitpicky way, but I think it's not. All of the terminology that the new Treks use is very fantastical. It's very like Lord of the Rings stuff, where it's like biblical sounding. It's not, they don't go to a single planet that's called like Tyrell 7 or something like that, or, you know, they don't go to like some scientific sounding place and they find this thing that they don't know what it is. Everything is called like the admonition, the artifact, the conclave of 8. It's like, why are the names all this strange non-Star Trek-y sounding stuff that honestly has very religious themes to it? It's like a lot of not really hard sci-fi or even sci-fi. It's just kind of this like religious awakening type stuff is always prominent in all of it.
Yeah, it's a good question. It is, it's strange because usually when they would do that traditionally on Star Trek, it was sort of like a unique event. When they would bring that sort of terminology into, at least the way my memory of it works.
I mean, honestly, all I can think about is V'ger, which is just a shortening of Voyager, which works in Star Trek. You know, like V'ger is kind of a funny name, but it comes from a place of not being fantastical. Yeah.
Well, you know, you got the whatever the thing is at the end of episode Star Trek 5. They talk about where they're going in
Shangri-La or whatever that's called.
Yeah, biblical religious terms in there. And every now and then it comes up, but it's usually kind of like an event, and it usually has some sort of direct.
That's also built off Cybok, who's playing himself as a prophet.
Sure. But but a lot of times there is the clash of it stands out because everything else is so science based that when they bring that stuff up, it becomes part of the story and that like it's something that they actually talk about.
Right.
Whereas in this, I mean, they did a little bit of that in like the first 5 episodes or maybe even fewer episodes than that of season 2 of Discovery, when it was like the faith versus whatever that they kind of dropped.
Faith versus something. That they never quite figured out what they were versing. Yeah.
But here, it just feels a lot more like it feels to me like it's just shorthand for mystery stuff. You know, you pick like a mysterious sounding name and then that saves you from having to do work to explain why it's mysterious and interesting.
Yeah. Conclave is a very mysterious word. You know, it's like the conclave, it just sounds so mystical and like you're like, what's that all about? Yeah.
Yeah, it's an odd choice. Especially when there is so much. I mean, maybe it's a conscious choice here because there is sort of like this very much is in line with a quest story, more than it is a general Star Trek type of story where there is the putting together of your group, and you know you've got Elnor there who literally looks like he's out of Lord of the Rings. You know, there is a lot of fantasy feeling elements to it, so maybe it's on purpose. But if it is, I don't know. I feel like it kind of undercuts the point of the franchise a little bit.
Yeah, it's not the story for this franchise. Or if you want to take it in that direction, it's not done appropriately enough where it's disguising the fantasy aspects as some kind of sci-fi story. I just find it distracting, really, and I think it just feeds into like I'm a little bit more limited about what I think Star Trek can do well, or what the franchise is kind of built for, and what makes it unique. And I think
what it can do well is accents.
Yeah, babe. Except for Patrick Stewart doing French, which is intentionally bad, but he still can't do it. I don't know. Where do you want to start with this one? Did you have anything sort of stuck out at you? I'm a little bit all over the place just because I think that there are... My main source of relief from this one was just figuring out what was going on. It's very underwhelming what's going on, I think.
Yes.
It's really not all that interesting what's happening, particularly with the Romulans and stuff. But you figure out a whole bunch of little stuff. You figure out why the Borg cube got shut down. You figure out, we find out that it was indeed Hugh's Fenris Ranger SOS button. It was not Picard, so that got resolved. You find out that O is a half Romulan, half Vulcan, which is a nice way to play both sides of the fence on that bullshit. Yeah, I don't know. Like, what did you think about all that stuff? All the resolutions, what's your takeaway?
Well, the one that had me scratching my head a little bit because I was trying to figure out if I was understanding it correctly. So please let me know if I'm tracking this right. The Jatvash are made up of a very small number of Romulans who can survive this weird brain thing.
All women, too, which I don't think
All
they draw
women?
attention to, but they're all women in that, yeah.
Okay.
Which is related to the women of the other thing. The emotional Romulans are all women.
The emotional Romulans.
The Elnor's family.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
So you've got the Jatvash, who is a very small number of people, who I assume operate. Are they operating within the purview of the Romulan people / Empire?
No, my understanding is that they're very black ops, and they're like a subsect of Romulan society. That's the only way that I think the story makes sense, is if that's how it works.
Yeah, it has to be the only way. It has to be the way, because nothing else makes sense. Because the thing that was confusing me was that at the end, they bring out all these ships and stuff, and they beam everybody off, and I didn't know if those were Jatvash ships or if they were Romulan, just regular Romulan ships.
Yeah.
And the thing that was sticking in my craw a little bit, but I guess it boils it down to what they're willing to do to stop the synths from the destroyer from coming or whatever, is that they actually purposely sacrificed the entire planet of Romulus in order to get in the hopes that Starfleet would pass a ban.
Oh, do you think that's what they did? Or is that said in the episode? That's not
Well, I don't think that they caused the supernova.
Right.
But they said that the Jatvash were behind the attack on Mars.
Right. Okay.
Which they did in order to, I guess, in the hope that the result of that attack would be Starfleet / the Federation doing a universal ban on synth technology.
Right.
But
it also destroys the fleet that is going to rescue Romulans.
Yeah, which, I mean, if you ask me, that's a Hail Mary pass you're going on right there. If you're hoping that like a single attack would cause the complete halt and outlawing of an entire field of research and ostensibly a group of people.
Yeah. I'm even more upset. I didn't even think about it, but it is cutting your nose to spite your face, really, because it stopped the Romulan rescue. Unless they're so driven by that they don't care about the Romulans on the home world. But it's strange.
I mean, you could extrapolate it out and be like, well, logistically, it was a sacrifice that they had to make in order to save more people, if that's the way they're thinking of it. Yep. But still, again, it's like was there legislation like on the floor already? Like at least in the X-Men movie, there's like already there's always anti-mutant legislation somewhere on the floor. So when Magneto blows up a hospital or something, it's ready to go.
Right.
Whereas it sounds like this was just like, okay, let's try this and hopefully it will cause them to ban synthetics or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's fine. Sure. It's not like...
It's not the biggest problem the show has, I don't think, but it's
no. It's also like if you told me that 5 episodes ago, I probably would have been more into it. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
Like what's the were you expecting anybody else to be behind it?
No, that's the thing about the mystery. Like it's the same as what Commodore O is. It's like if you thought that O was kind of a mystery as to what she is, they did the worst job of hiding that mystery that's ever been done in anything. So you knew from the start that Rafi was correct, and that's why it's difficult to buy into Rafi as a character at the same time, because she's saying the thing that obviously must have happened, which is that the Romulans are behind the attack. And, Picard pushes it aside by just saying, that doesn't make any sense. Why would they do that? And here you're kind of given the answer, well, yeah, it doesn't make any sense, but I guess we're just supposed to believe that the belief system of the Zhat Vash is so intense that they're willing to basically kill their planet to stop the androids from coming around. And I mean, this is all narratively, that's all built on this idea that we're going to show you this incredibly rapid, violent montage, and you just have to buy as a viewer that whatever they're seeing is a devastating future that makes people go crazy, basically.
Yeah, which involves apparently that robot from the remember was it the Heineken commercials that had like the robot that would open a bunch of beers on its chest or something? It was a Super Bowl commercial like 10 years ago that blew everybody's minds because it was a really great CGI robot.
Yeah. It's the one that turns into Data. I'm assuming the little white robot face.
It's that guy. It's a cross between that guy and the dancing football robot from Fox.
Yeah, right. He looks a little bit like he has the coloring of that little toy robot that kids used to buy, who's called I something or other, and he would talk to you.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's built. Do you think that we're ever going to see what they think the future is going to be like, or are we just supposed to buy into the fact that it's bad news if the synths come around to it?
The only way that I can imagine that we see it is if sometime in the next 2 episodes, Commodore O, or who can the Romulans do mind melds, or is it just the Vulcans?
I think that's why they said she's half Vulcan, because they have they have to make the mind meld possible.
Well, okay. I was going to say the only way I think we see it is if Picard sees it.
Sure. So she force mind melds on him or something.
Yeah, or something. I'm sure they can figure out a way around it that is mystical or something. Who knows? But I think if Picard sees it, we probably get a better look at it. But
is there any way that showing that is a good idea for the writers? You know what I mean? Like you've promised everything here, and if you show me that like androids throw a bomb down a Klingon well, I'll be like, what is this? Like, why are they so scared of that?
Yeah, I think it would have to be less. It would have to be something that's meaningful to the viewer and to Picard, if that's the case.
Yeah,
like if he gets his mind melded or something. This wouldn't make any sense, obviously. But if he gets the mind meld thing done, and all of a sudden it turns out the destroyer is like lore or something,
right?
Yeah. Like something like that. Then it would be worth showing. But otherwise, yeah, I don't think it really adds much except to be like, yeah, bombs are pretty bad.
You know, it's been nice though. A lot of the fan theories are turning out not to be true, which is a great relief, God. I think, which is maybe to be expected that a lot of them are wrong. But at the same time, fan theories maybe tend to think too big almost, like they tend to put a lot of like, well, this is going to be a universally ground shaking, call all the recurring characters that we've ever seen back for a thing. And it never really seems to work out that way.
Yeah, they always go like big in a way that doesn't even really narratively make any sense.
Yeah.
So every now and then you get one that ends up being like right on the line and plausible. But like on the Red Letter Media coverage early on, I don't know if he was serious, but I think Mike is the main guy, I think, was speculating that Daj and Soji were actually Qs.
Yes, is that right?
And he was talking about how he thought that they were part of the Q Collective or something, and I was like, that's just there's really nothing to back that up narratively that's happening here.
No, there's been a lot of Q speculation, and I just don't see how Q, beyond the fact that you're a fan and you want to see Q, I don't see how Q would ever fit into this story at all.
Yeah. I mean, unless he honestly, great stinger for the last episode if Q shows up at the end.
Right, he snaps his fingers and saves it.
Yeah, if they have the No, I'm talking like he would be the Enterprise shot from the first season of Discovery.
He kind of flies into space.
Yeah, no. It's like they do the thing where they save everything and everything's kind of like winding down, and then all of a sudden, Picard turns around and there's Q on his throne with his stupid planet Krypton hat.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh,
to be continued.
John Luke, it's time," or whatever. It's I don't know. It's really difficult to again. I think Alison Pill is doing the a lot of the legwork to make any of this even remotely relatable.
Yeah,
because she's the only one who's acting as though she's witnessed the end of the world via synthetic life forms and is reacting as such.
Yeah.
But aside from that, it's like, you start throwing around these words like, Conclave of 8, no, the Destroyer, and blah, 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 blah. Unless she turns, the only Destroyer I want to see is the one that turns into the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
Mm-hmm. Galactus.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hell yeah. I mean, if you get to the last episode and it turns out that, like, Soji transforms into Galactus.
Or she's the Silver Surfer, basically.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I'm 100% there for that.
The pill thing is fine. Alison Pill thing is fine. I didn't like the little clumky thing. They had to sneak it in. She's like, she also gave me a psychic block so I wouldn't talk about it with anybody.
Yeah. Come on, man. Did she give her the cliff notes? Because everybody else who sees this thing blows their own brains out or rips
except
their
for
faces
Narissa.
off.
Narissa's strong enough to do it. Yeah.
Why didn't we see that stuff like early on? Like that should have been, I feel like if we got that, the episode that directly after she was introduced, it would make the stuff she was doing feel a lot less pointless.
Narissa, you mean, not Alison Pill. Yeah.
No, yeah, Narissa.
I think you could open the series with that scene of seeing the vision and the Romulans of the Zhat Vash doing that little ceremony that they have. That could be the thing that opens the series, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's information that I don't know why they held on to for so long. Because, it's not really adding anything. And also, oh, God. When they were like, this happened 200,000 years ago, and so there was 200,000 years ago. There was a civilization that created sentient robots.
Yes,
which then they passed the point of no return, and then they killed everybody.
Yes, and your options there are they either killed everybody, including themselves, or they still exist somehow. Right?
Sure. I mean, it can't just be the Borg, right?
I wouldn't assume so. The Borg seem too
rudimentary
for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why the reveal that the aunt of Narissa, who got Borgified and caused the cube to shut down, the reason that she shut down the cube is as simple as they say here, that her immense grief basically overpowered the cube and it shut it off.
Sure.
And that's fine, but I think that and this is maybe not fair because it's all personal, but I was thinking that there must be some bigger link than that to cause the Borg cube to be deactivated. So I thought that her knowing of this previous history would somehow cause like a logic loop or something in the Borg, that they're like, how can we exist if this is blah, 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 whatever. But it doesn't seem to be anything as complicated as that, which is maybe a nice segue into the Borg here. The Borg are my own personal blue balls in this story.
Oh, dude.
I'm so disappointed with what the Borg are doing here.
You have no idea. Like, I was actually
I was so excited when she became... When she said, "We are the Borg," and when Seven hooks up to the little Dr. Octopus thing and says, "We are the Borg."
It's nice those things could plug into her back through her jacket without breaking the material. Yeah, no, that's what I said at the beginning, where they almost did something interesting with 7 of 9, and then they just sucked everybody out into space, and then she's like, "Well, I guess I'm not Borg," and like, why would you go that close and then not, like, you would have had people like standing up and clapping if you got 5 minutes of Borg just tearing through these dudes.
I know. I don't like. in that regard, I think that there are serious budget issues here where they're spending much on.
They did it on TNG just fine.
They did, but I think that the overall set design here costs more money than TNG's set design did. So
sure.
The fact that they add these like computer graphics to everything and no one can push a button, they have to like twirl lights with their fingers, is just adding up the cost of, you could have built this like $5 plywood thing, right, and just have them push the buttons on it. But instead they do all this other stuff, and we haven't seen a like quote unquote real Borg in this series. We've seen the X-Borgs, but we have not seen a normal Borg just sort of kind of walking around. And I have a lot of problems with the Seven story. I think that, like, first of all, if you're going to look at this as a Seven, like if someone that is familiar with Seven, I think when I made it to the halfway point and she did that thing where she hooked up to the Borg, I was ready to walk away from the episode going, well, I have to give these guys credit because they did something that thoroughly undermines a character that everyone seems to love. Like her just kind of going back and becoming a Borg again is very problematic, I think, for that character that took 4 seasons of trying to get away from that whole thing. And the biggest problem to me is that if you were going to do this with Seven has to be a main cast star in this series from the beginning. You know, you can't just bring her in for 2 episodes and have this dramatic thing where I think the biggest problem, as much as I loved it just because I was so excited by the fact that something was going to happen on the cube, I don't get the good sense from this story that it was a last resort for her to do this. It felt like she went in willing, and she was very willing and able to hook up again. She gives a few cursory glances of like, I hope I don't have to do this for real. I hope this is going to work out. But it just didn't, for the gravitas of what it meant for her to do that, I really don't think that the show nailed it. And then they ultimately just kind of back out of it by the end, where she's just like, nah, forget it about it. I don't want to do this anymore, and unplugs herself.
Yeah, and it seemingly has no repercussions.
Right. And we just had these episodes talking about how brutal unlinking from the collective is for these people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the whole Borg story they're telling, is how brutal it is.
Yeah.
It's really unfortunate because I think they could have done something really interesting with her from that regard, or in that regard. But yeah, they don't pay that off, and they don't, like, it's not even, you know, I'm sure you could argue that her backing out of it makes more sense than her not backing out of it or whatever.
It's truer to the character that she does back out of it at the end. I will agree with you there. Yeah. Which
is totally fine. However, I don't think it should just be as easy as going like, well, I guess I'm done here, and then unplugging, you know? Right. Yeah.
That was my point about Hugh. If she had did this as a grand sacrifice, right? That works for me. If she did what I was thinking Hugh was going to do, but she actually does it here, which is to go back into the collective to kind of save the day and maybe take the cube and enter it into a transwarp thing and just shoot it off somewhere so it's not a threat to anybody anymore. Mm-hmm. That makes sense to me as a 7 of 9 storyline, but the way that they did it here doesn't make it a sacrifice, and it doesn't make it seem like it has any gravitas to it.
And I mean, you know, I would put money on wherever they end up and get attacked by the Romulans. I think we have a better chance of seeing 7 of 9 showing up, driving the Borg cube down the Death Star trench to blow up Vader's ship than we do seeing any Starfleet ships. But with that in mind, I was going to say, you could pull the thing where it's like it's the last resort for her to hook up to the Borg thing. It's the thing she doesn't want to do, but she has to do it in order to X, Y, and Z. But in doing so, since this is a cube that is like not connected to the Borg consciousness or collective or whatever, she ends up now being empowered and given new agency and materials to aid her in her helping of other Borg, other ex-Borg, you know, which was essentially kind of what we were saying with Hugh. And I think that would be because, you know, she ends up having to go back to the place that causes her the most amount of damage in her life, but she comes out the other end with actually even stronger than she was before.
Right. Takes advantage. She takes the power back from her enemy. Yeah.
Yeah. Now she's using the Borg technology she's been running from her whole life in order to help save other people who are in her situation.
Yeah.
That'd be nice.
That can still happen, I think. There's still room for that.
It can, but I don't think it's going to have a lot of weight to it.
No, because of the because of the. I feel like it's not a story that you can back off of and then go back into it later on. It feels like once she's hooked in, that kind of is the thing from that point on. Yeah.
So I like. Why don't they could have had 7, she hooks into the thing, does whatever, and then Elnor's like, hey, we got to go. We got to get out of this. And she can't let go. So then he has to, give some absolute candor speech or some bullshit as to why she needs to help Picard.
Yeah.
And which grounds her enough that they can go help, and then at the end she's like, "Oh, I actually realized I'm a lot more," that kind of thing.
Yeah,
I think that would be really satisfying. A lot more, but you don't get that if she's just like, if they cut to her driving the Borg cube by like stick shift at the end and just blowing up Romulan ships at the end, which I wouldn't put it past them to do.
You had mentioned before in a previous episode what the opposite of Chekhov's gun is. I think the name is Romulan badge at this point.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I can't believe they never did anything with that.
They had a 5-minute scene with the guy describing how shit was going to go bad and you need to get the fuck out of there the minute you see these badges go off, and they apparently are not going to do anything with it. We'll see. We could be wrong, but this seemed like the moment to do something with it.
Yeah, there's nobody left on the cube to do it to.
Right, yeah.
Unless they come back to life and start hunting Seven and Elnor or something, but...
Yeah, the Romulans have the badges. Like, why would they have the badges? You're never going to see those badges again. Yeah.
I feel like you missed your opportunity.
I'm really disappointed by that whole, like, the most excitement I felt from the series, honestly, was her hooking up and the cube starting to come back. And they even have lines, the guy's like, oh, Jesus, like the thing is like reactivating. Like, what are we going to do? But it all feels so rushed, and it feels like the kind of event that you could have legitimately built an entire episode around if all the characters are on the cube. And it's so quick and so silly and so... Just the way that once Seven powers up and says, we are the Borg, and then Narissa's like, just open the window and suck them all out into space.
Yeah. Narissa is too, I don't want to say she's too good at her job, but she has, this sounds regressive, but she has extra human capability in place of characterization. Mm-hmm. So
she's supposed to be good at her job. Would you disagree?
Yeah. I guess she is. I guess she's good at her job, to some extent.
I mean, she's very lucky that you can just open the Borg cube and suck all the guys into space.
I guess what I'm looking for is that she's never put in a situation really where she's at a disadvantage. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that doesn't make her a stronger villain to me. It just makes her boring.
She never uses her super intellect to find her way out of a problem situation. It's always kind of, even here where it's just like, she's like, what are we going to do? Are we going to poison these Borg? Are we going to like strangle them one by one? And the guy's like, how about we just open the door? She says, oh, it's like good idea. It's it's too easy, really.
Yeah. All of this goes back to the thing I've been saying for a few episodes now, where the Borg cube as a destination should have been a much bigger deal. Mm-hmm. It should have been the thing, even if you want to say, like, let's say the first half of the season or whatever. You probably need a little bit more time than that. But it should have been the place that Picard was driving towards, that he knew he had to go, and then all of this stuff comes together at the cube. And so then you've got Picard on the cube, filled with Borg, trying to get Soji or whatever, and then you need 7 of 9 there to plug into the thing. Picard was happy that people were there, not Borg, but now the actual Borg are coming back to life, so that's pretty scary.
Yep.
And it should, the escape from the Borg cube should have been like the end of Act 2 in the like the big crescendo at the end of Act 2 in the story. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it ended up just being sort of a hi, hello, let's get out of here, but we're not going to abandon I don't know. It's just, it's been very unsatisfying.
It has. And it started with such promise. It was the most promising aspect early on, but it's just kind of slowly fallen apart. piece by piece. Yeah, I even in a narrative sense, like, to not use the Borg and the XBs that remain on there to sort of show Seven's point of view a little bit more, like, you're kind of in this weird contrast where when she hooks up, right, and the We Are the Borg thing powers on, at that point you're kind of stuck because Seven feels bad that the Borg are sucked out into space, right? But we know, and she should know, on some level, that that's the best thing that can happen for everybody on the cube, right? Like,
sure,
reactivating the Borg as they are is bad news, and it's not like the series has done a good job of demonstrating that you can sort of heal the Borg. It's really just said that if you shut them down and you disconnect the people from it, you can save the people, but it hasn't gone to convince me that the Borg themselves are not a galactic threat to everybody.
Right, yeah. I mean, you can make the argument that she's plugged into the thing, so she is now part of them again, so she would react that way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's why can she control the XBs?
Can't she?
I assumed that's what she was. After they all got sucked out, the XBs then started like beating the shit out of all the Romulans.
I just thought that they were mad because of what the Romulans did to.
Oh, maybe it was. It played to me like she was in control of them, but it wouldn't really make a lot of sense if that was the case.
Yeah, I think that they were just kind of upset about it. I mean, the XBs are in a strange position too because they're this concept, right? But every time we've seen them, they don't act like individual people. Like when Narissa had them standing up to be executed one by one, they would just stand there and get shot. It's not like they tried to run away or anything. So you don't really know what they are as characters. Are they automatons? Are they just Borg without mechanical pieces on them? Are they people who are actually like want to live a free life or something? It's a little bit confused.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just another stack on the I don't have a good metaphor ready. It's just another instance of them really burying the lead of what the best idea in this show is. You know, it's instead of it being more about like there's such a, and maybe they swing back to this at the end of the season or something to, you know, make it seem like it was in their minds, but they didn't feel like focusing on it. But clearly among, you know, you said last episode the theme of the show is regret. There's also clearly a theme of helping those that you think are rejected by the populace and by the majority. And I think that XBs are a perfect way to feed that into the theme. You know, especially with Picard, because with Picard, you know, you've got the stuff with the Romulans and the stuff with the synths. Yeah, that's a no-brainer that he's gonna be like, yeah, we have to help the synths because some of my best friends are synths.
Yeah. But
when it comes to the Borg and the XBs, he has a legitimate prejudice against that. So that's a much harder sell. You would think it's a much harder sell for him than it is than saving Data's daughter would be.
Right.
So they had an opportunity to kind of play with that, and they didn't really go into it at all.
Yeah, and the more I think about it, the more you start to see the guest star aspect of this, I think, is impacting the narrative in some ways, because if you honestly think about it, there's no reason that Seven is not just the Borg Reclamation Director the entire time, and there's no Hugh in this story, right?
Sure, yeah.
Because
or vice versa. I mean, it could have just been Hugh the whole time.
It could have just been Hugh. I think... Yes, and I think the series was interested in maximizing its star power. It's like star returning power that you could do, so they inserted both of them into it. But honestly, if it's just Hugh or Seven in that role from the start, it's what I was talking about with Hugh, which is that they're doing something and then they kind of realize that the only way to stop what the Romulans are doing is to reassimilate themselves. And instead you just have this kind of awkward handoff where you have to explain Seven has this Fenris Ranger badge that she can come and get you for, and Hugh has one, and then she shows up after Hugh is dead, and then she just kind of takes his place, and they even mention in the script that she was the ex-director of this place, and...
Did they say that?
They do. They say that we've found Elnor in the previous director's office, which is hers, I'm assuming.
Oh.
Unless they're
What?
talking about Hugh in the past tense.
Maybe? Yeah, I guess I didn't catch that.
I might
know,
totally be wrong.
I don't know if that means 7 specifically, but
You think they just might be talking about Hugh being dead, that they're saying it's the previous director's office? It could be.
But they also have some weird dialogue. Excuse me. With Hugh and with Elnor and Seven in the Queen chamber, where he's like, "So this is where the Queen would stay," and she's like, "The Queen's never been here," and he's like, "So would she come here sometimes?" And she's like, "No, she's never been to this cube." And so I don't know what that dialogue was about.
Yeah.
Except maybe implying that yes, Seven used to run the cube, or I don't know. It's very strange. Now, I think if they really wanted to maximize their pathos and drama and star power, have them both, have Seven and Hugh, and have them be a couple, and they both work, or maybe not necessarily, they don't have to be a couple, but have them both working on the reclamation thing, and they have like a really close connection with each other.
Yeah.
So then eventually one of them has to reassimilate or hook themselves back up to the cube, and which is a fucking huge deal. And as for the other one, and so you get that big moment of watching the one that you love or whatever get pulled back into the thing that's been destroying.
Yeah, you've been trying to get them away from. Yeah,
yeah, that's the thing that brought you both together in the first place. That kind of thing. I think that would have been really effective.
Yeah, no, it's definitely true. We've talked about the Borg for enough. We talked about Rios. I mean, the other aspect is just kind of. I don't mind the Picard talking to Soji stuff in this. There's a lot of characters talking to each other in this episode, which is not necessarily bad. Some of it's pretty good. We just did a TNG revisit on Patreon where we watched an old episode, and we were commenting in that one about how different the characters act, particularly Picard in the TNG series is much more of we were saying that he's much more of a performance from Patrick Stewart as opposed to this Picard, which feels more like it's just Patrick Stewart being himself on this Star Trek show. When he's talking about Data, I just feel that the conversation they have about whether or not Data and Picard love each other is a very strange Star Trek conversation to be having. It
is? Oh, go ahead.
Well, that's pretty much it. It's not that I think that it's wrong or inappropriate for those characters, but at the same time, when you view the TV show, it would feel like your boss 10 years down the line going, "I really loved Wes." It's just, they have a relationship, but it didn't feel like a love relationship. Like love is almost too strong a word for me or something. And how you define it. I don't know. How did you feel about it?
Well, I actually liked that scene because it felt like they were conscious of that, because when she's asking him those questions and she's like, what do you hope Data would say about you from his own eyes? And he's like, I hope he would think I was punctual and always ready to listen and
had an agenda in place. Yeah,
had an agenda in place, and that I wasn't too hard on him when he did crazy robot shit. It's never he never really speaks about Data in lovey-dovey tones, and I actually thought it was kind of an interesting change from the way he talks about him at the beginning of the series.
Yeah.
Because he's a lot more in the beginning of the series. He's a lot more like, "Oh, he was someone who's very, very dear to me," and blah 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 blah. And then when he's like confronted about it directly, he's like, we work together," which I kind of enjoyed because I feel like that's more accurate. Where it's like, he's dear to me because he saved my life, but it's like, we were colleagues.
Good work, friends.
It's like, it's like a war buddy who takes a bullet for you. It's like, I met him in basic training and he was a cool dude and he gave his life for me, so I'll never forget it, but I don't know where he lives.
Yeah,
I don't mean to underplay that stuff, because obviously it can be very intense.
I just think that for as much as the series thinks that it's about Data and Picard going off to sort of avenge Data or do this for Data, it doesn't feel like we've had enough of that. Like I'm frankly kind of surprised by how little Data has been in the series really. Like I expected recurring dream sequences with Data from Picard, and that has not happened. So what little you see of him, it's one of those things, like if you were a person new to this series, I think you would think that the Data stuff is like bizarre and horrible, really. Like, why does he keep talking about this guy, kind of? He talked about him once, and then he talks about him here. And that's maybe not fair to hold against the show, but I think it's more to the fact that I don't know if the show is really doing enough with that storyline. And I know that the show is overstuffed to this point. Like, there's a lot going on, but that to me felt integral. Like it was the core of what Picard was doing, and the regret theme is built off of like how he regrets what happened to Data, but they haven't really broached it in any way. And when they do broach it, they have the very on the nose Raffi scene where she's like, "Jean-Luc, what do you know about Soji?" And Picard and the audience go, "We don't know jack shit about Soji." I guess that's the problem.
I was going to bring that up because it seemed to me like somebody's note card actually accidentally slipped and fell into the script.
Right.
And so they just read it as dialogue.
Michelle Hurd memorized it by accident and just says it. Yeah.
Because that's what I've been saying for the entirety of the series, and you can't answer that question.
But I guess it's intentional, like
I guess
that it's a bad save at that point, because I think that it just, if it is supposed to be the case that you don't know anything about her, and it might just be a weird coincidence that Jean-Luc Picard, the character, does not know anything about her, but we're supposed to know something about her. But that's not how it's worked out over the course of 8 episodes.
Yeah, if that's intentional, that's not great storytelling. I don't think.
It can be intentional all you want, but it doesn't mean that it's a desired effect that you're getting from it.
What I actually really did like about that scene with Soji and Picard was when she has that line where she says something about her memories not feeling like her own, and is there any way for you to understand what that's like? And then you get the little hint of the theme, which we learned recently is actually from Inner Light. And
the opening, the theme song of Picard is from opening or Inner Light, if people are unaware, which took a long time for people to realize.
I know. I'm surprised. Usually people are on that immediately. I think it's because it's not the thing that he plays in Inner Light.
It's in the background.
Son plays,
yeah.
Which is actually pretty interesting, an interesting choice. But it's and then he's as they're playing that, he says something to the effect of like, "Yeah, I actually have a pretty good idea of what that's like." I thought that was a nice callback because Picard in that way is uniquely equipped to sympathize with her state because of going through something similar in that episode.
Yeah, and I thought they were going to tie it into the Borg aspect somehow. His experience as a Borg, like he could have a line about like having the memory of all the other Borg that are still with him or something like that. They've never really gotten into it, but I felt it would have been appropriate to bring up at that point. But yeah, they don't, and the Soji thing continues to be weak.
It's kind of interesting that they went with Inner Light when they established the Borg thing as something that weighs heavily on his mind with that conversation with Seven,
right,
a few episodes ago.
But
I guess the Inner Light thing is less depressing.
It's a little bit more touching and less violation, I suppose.
Yeah. Although what Soji's going through is essentially a violation. So it works. Well, whatever. Either way.
Is there anything else we're not talking about in this one, or are we just going to wrap it up at this point?
I still don't, and I know this has become like a hot button issue for people for some reason, of like it being an excuse for not liking the show. I still don't like the swearing in this show.
Yeah, I felt it very much in this episode. I felt that this one had
much of it.
Some swearing that was completely not purposeful in it.
Yeah. And, I hate to sound like if you listen to this show, I'm not averse to foul language. It's just, it feels so out of place to me. And apparently the Admiral only knows how to swear in Picard, which I think is just funny. But go ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, it either feels incredibly intentional, which is awkward, or it feels so flippant that you're like, this doesn't belong in Star Trek, because the Clancy one is one that feels very intentional and very strange, as she would say it. And then I think Agnes drops in a very unnecessary F-bomb later on for no reason.
Yes. Yeah.
She's just kind of like, yeah, what the fuck are we going to do about it? And that's what it is. And it doesn't feel like it has a purpose. And it just feels like they're being sort of edgy. And like, it's another thing that I'm kind of coming around to. I know that there are other Star Trek podcasts that are sort of more aggressively fans than I consider myself to be, but it's people with kids who are disappointed that they can't show Discovery or Picard to their kids because they have scenes like Klingons getting disemboweled and people bashing their heads in with rocks and stuff. And I didn't think that was a big deal, but I think it is, just because it's not what the show has ever always been about. Like, it's had violence in it, but it's never just been that kind of gratuitous smash your face with a rock kind of violence.
Yeah, I've been feeling the same way too, because it's like I put Star Trek more or less in the same wheelhouse as Doctor Who. And if characters on Doctor Who started saying like, we gotta get to the fucking TARDIS or whatever, it would feel out of place and weird, and you wouldn't feel good about it, because Doctor Who is the kind of science fiction show that you can watch as an adult, you can watch as a kid, and you can watch with your kid if you're an adult.
Yeah.
So and I feel like Star Trek is generally the same kind of show. It's never been the kind of franchise that becomes more mature as its audience matures.
Right.
Because the audience is so multi-generational. So I find it interesting that they've chosen to go that route.
Yeah, it's just got to be...
Especially with, again, I don't want to sound like a prude or anything, but especially with how much in the weeds of sex and violence and swearing like every other show on TV is.
Right.
It's almost a breath of fresh air to see a show that's like a solid PG-13, but isn't going overboard into R-rated territory. And so you can kind of feel I think it stands out in that way when they don't do that with shows.
Yeah. It's an example of, to me, it feels very much like a studio note on things. They're like, we need to get edgier. Like, we need to...
That's why O was wearing those sunglasses.
Right, exactly.
Star Trek had to get cooler.
Do you remember those Ray-Ban commercials where there was vampires like hanging out on the beach, and then the sun is coming up, and then someone has like fake Ray-Bans, and he turns into dust, and the other vampires laugh and go, "It looks like somebody forgot their Ray-Bans."
Yeah, I do remember those. Yes.
The swearing is just, it feels like an attempt to make the show... it's the cliche that everything is becoming a little bit more dark and edgy and like sort of cynical and stuff like that. And it feels like it's an attempt to do that. It's almost like a person not familiar with Star Trek is kind of like, well, this, guys, we got this new series coming back, and I watched a couple episodes of TNG. Got to tell you, I thought it was a little cheesy, a little bit dated. Like, let's have characters swear in this show and stuff like that and make it more modern. Yeah.
I love Quentin Tarantino. And I would love to see what Quentin Tarantino would do with Star Trek. Mm-hmm. But when they were talking about how that supposed movie was going to be like rated R, and in my head I'm thinking like, do I really want to see Scotty explaining to a Romulan general like the racist undertones of where the Romulans came from, and dropping the N-word and stuff? I don't want to see that. It doesn't work for me.
It surprised me because I like Tarantino, maybe I was giving him credit, but I thought that he would have been true to the series, but the content would have been R-rated for some reason, but it wouldn't have been in a Tarantino dialogue kind of way.
Yeah.
Like
I would hope so.
Yeah. Because that would seem strange.
Yeah, I would feel like, I hope that he would be self-aware enough to realize that maybe you keep the Sam Jackson dialogue for the next movie and not the Star Trek movie.
Yeah. Anything else about this one, or are we pretty much done? I think I'm pretty much done with that. We covered everyone else's kind of minor roles in this one. Is either, you learn a little bit about Jurati, you learn a bit about Soji and all that stuff, and it ends with them going through the transwarp drive, and they're going to find the Conclave of 8 or whatever that planet is.
We actually did see a Starfleet ship in this episode.
Which one did we say?
In Rios's Federation locker box.
There's the picture of one, right? The old.
Yeah. He pulls out a bunch of other stuff, and on one of the things he pulls out is like a schematic drawing of whatever the ship was that he was on.
Yes, that ethnic name. It sounded like it was like a Arab. It sounded like it was an Arabic name ship or something.
Yes. I don't remember what it is, but
yeah, they do. But you don't see a real ship, but you do see the schematic drawing of a starship, and they promised us a fleet of ships, but I don't think we're going to see them.
Yeah, again, Blue Ball City. They're like, yeah. We're going to Deep Space 12. Oh, cool. We're going to get to see what the 30-year version of a deep space place looks like.
Yep.
And we're going to send a fleet of ships to meet you there. Oh, fantastic. This is going to be great. And then they're like, let's not go there. Let's jump 40 million light years to the Conclave of 8 so we can figure out who dragged 8 suns together.
Yeah. Again, it's a fantasy thing. I mean,
that's a Doctor Who thing. It is 100% a Doctor Who plot.
I guess it all comes down to explanation, because they do have those TNG episodes like the Dyson Sphere, which is someone built a planet around a sun, and it's enormous, and they're kind of amazed by it. But it's just it really comes down to me to the description of it. Like, you can have this fantasy thing, but if you describe very like scientifically and dryly how they made this thing, it doesn't feel as ridiculous as two people put a tractor beam on a sun and they pulled it over here and parked it next to another one.
Yeah, like I feel like the living, learning planet from season 2 of Discovery, at least they kind of tried to explain that a little bit.
Right.
And I feel like that, at least so far, plays better than someone dragged 8 stars together in order to let
other people know about it.
Yeah. I don't know, man. My biggest problem with this show is they've really made it difficult for me to care about anything that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't, because everything is plot. There's no characters that really make me care, and like when I get close, they don't end up doing anything interesting with them. It's just plot, and it's just not interesting to me.
Do they frighten you?
I'd be a fool if they did.
Something far worse is coming, Centurion. If I fail in my work.
We are Borg.
Well, let's call it a day there. We've talked for an hour. Thank you guys for listening. You can support the show at patreon.com/thepensky-file if you are so inclined. A couple dollars a month gets you extra stuff. And as always, our Captain Tier supporters get a shout out. Special thanks go to Andrew Cherlog, Ben Douglas, Captain Quark, Cardinal Doomsday, Christian Michaels, Christian Pouth, Darth Moss, David Beardmore, David K, Dwayne Hackett, Eric Johnson, HH28, Jacob123, Jeffrey Koch, Joint Mango, Jordan Cooper, Kevin Reyes, Kyle Barrett, Mad Courier 6, Matt Cutler, Matt Ross, Mike Burnett, Nathan Elliott, Neil Brennan, Nick Sergi, Robert Cummins, Russell Owens, Samuel Custer, Grim Santo, Sean, Stefan Minton, Tark Latif, Tom Howes, Vault 13 Hero, and Will Yates. Thank you very much for supporting the show. Much appreciated. And I think that's it. We got the next 2, there's 2 episodes left in Star Trek Picard, and that'll be good, and then we'll be over with that. I have to say, they've stopped putting the trailers for the next episode at the end of this one. Did you watch the trailer for the next episode?
Yeah, it was on the end of the episode.
Was it? Mine don't come up that way.
I don't know.
I downloaded it on my tablet. Maybe that's why.
Oh, yeah, that might be it, yeah.
That might be getting it right. I looked it up. That's actually, it's a fairly underwhelming trailer, which is surprising to me. But it's a lot of them driving on a ship looking at stuff in space, and then it looks like they crash on the planet.
Then the lights on the ship go out for some reason.
Yeah, it'll be strange.
I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Can't judge anything. I was surprised by how low energy it looked, or something, or just it looked a little strange.
Going into the 9 and 10 are like a 2-parter, right? It's like a 2-part finale.
Yes, it's part 1, part 2. Yep.
What are you looking forward to going into the finale? Like, what are you hoping will pay off? What are you hoping will, Like, what are you excited to see in the last 2 episodes of this season, if anything?
Honestly, not much, because the Borg thing is over at this point.
Yeah.
And that's what I was kind of looking forward to. I mean, I don't think they're going to, but I would like to see their attempt at explaining what the old androids did to the universe. I think would be like, I at least feel like I'm being teased and I need to know that. But character-wise, even Picard, I don't see him ending in some drastically different spots. I just see him completing the mission and then going back home or something.
Yeah.
And none of the other characters are really... I don't care what would happen to Rios. I don't care what would happen to Raffi. I don't care what happens to Girardi. So I'm in kind of a tough spot with the remaining 2 episodes.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm not really sure what there is to really look forward to. I mean, the lead into this is that they're going to the synth homeworld, but I don't even really know what that means.
Yep.
And they've made no inclination that, unless I missed it, is the synth homeworld separate from Bruce Maddox's house?
Oh.
Or is it supposed to be his house?
I would have assumed before you started me thinking about it that they're the same planets, but they might not be.
Yeah, I don't know. And if this is a different planet than that, and this is the synth, quote unquote, synth homeworld, then I guess that implies that Maddox didn't build these synths. They were from something else.
Maddox couldn't have gone there because he would have no way to travel that far, right?
I don't know. I mean, does he have one of those
transwarp drives?
Corellian portal things they walk through on the Borg cube?
No, I don't think. They must be going to a different planet than where they grew up, but that doesn't make any sense.
But that's the place that was in her mind in the dream.
And that's where Narek is chasing them at the end of this episode too.
Yeah. I don't know.
Huh.
Is that implying that Maddox didn't actually build them? And that they are pre-existing synths from some... I don't know.
Or he just showed up at that planet and used the technology that already existed or something?
Maybe. Is it like a planet-wide version of J.F. Sebastian's house in Blade Runner, where it's like a bunch of different toys and robot people walking around? I don't know what to expect, and I don't mean that in a good way.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I'm not going into that going like, oh, I can't wait to see what happens, because I literally don't know what is going on or what I should be looking forward to.
Yeah, it's tough. There's only 2 episodes left. We'll see what they can do with it, and then we'll cast our final judgments on Star Trek Picard. We'll have some final thoughts and all that stuff. So thank you guys for listening. Patreon.com/The File. You can check out all the social media down below. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, blah, blah, blah. The Discord channel. If you want to join the conversation as these things happen, you can join the Discord. There'll be a link down below. And I think that's pretty much it. Clay, do you have anything you want to say before we go?
No, not really. We've got a new Rotten Horror Picture Show coming out this coming Tuesday. We'll be doing Starry Eyes, which is a very cool horror movie from 2013, I believe. Mm-hmm. Directed by the guys who directed the Pet Sematary remake and starring the woman who played Wendy Torrance in Dr. Sleep. So it's a cool movie. Check it out and come check out the podcast.
Yep, thepenskyfile.com. You can find that podcast there. And then the week after, we have our final Oscars for Real Ripe and Real Rotten. We did Marriage Story on Netflix with Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson, which Clay enjoyed thoroughly. We are
You son of a bitch.
You're done
every day, Wes. I get on this Discord and I hope that you're dead. I hope that if I could make it certain that the podcast was okay and that you died, it would be the best day of my life.
Hold on. I need to go awkwardly punch the wall here. Yeah, there we go. Done.
You know, I was reading, I'm sorry, this is the wrong podcast for that, but I was reading he did that like 57 times or something.
Oh, really?
So maybe that's why the one they use, he looks like he's kind of
a little
not
tender.
Really giving it everything. Yeah.
Well, check out Marriage Story. It's on Real Ripe and Real Rotten. You can check out Starry Eyes. It's coming out in a couple days. And then let us know what you think about the latest episode of Picard and where you think the series is going to end up in a couple episodes. So thanks very much for listening. We'll see you later.